incredibly huge. I don't think it's even sunk in for me yet. It's such a, like, when I first heard it, it was off the charts, so incredibly extraordinary that it was too much for my processors to handle. So it's just kind of, that does not compute, as the Lost in Space robot would tell us. But I mean, that is such a huge deal. I mean, there's so much there to talk about. But what's interesting, when I first heard about this news, I've realized that I didn't first react to it as a Star Wars fan. I first reacted to it as a Star Trek fan, which I find very interesting because Star Wars is also very big in my life, and I could do a whole episode. I'd love to do a whole episode talking to you about George Lucas. For crying out loud, I could do a whole podcast on the subject of George Lucas and his mind and the creation of Star Wars and all the things that he's gone through over the decades and we as fans have gone through. It's just huge, absolutely huge. But as far as J.J. Abrams directing Star Wars 7, it really is an odd circumstance. Let me tell you how I feel about J.J. Abrams as a filmmaker. When he did Star Trek, there's obviously a little bit of mixed feelings about that. I have incredibly mixed feelings about Star Trek 2009 and the JJ reboot and stuff, which is too huge to get into here. We'll have plenty of opportunity to talk about that maybe, before the new film's about to come out. But I mean, I didn't really respect J.J. Abrams until I saw Super 8, and then I really, really loved that. And Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol was an amazing film, and I didn't think that group was capable of that. I talked a little bit about the original Mission Impossible show last week, actually, and I mean, did you hear that? I got to say last week. Yeah, I didn't think the Tom Cruise gang would pull off an amazing movie, but they did with Ghost Protocol. But JJ was just producing on that one, but he did Super 8, which was sort of a passion project of his with Spielberg producing, and that's really where my respect for the guy comes. I haven't seen Lost or anything else. I know JJ's also sort of a hack TV producer with such memorable hits as Undercovers, about a married couple who are secret agents. Initially, I'm not going to get into a review of Undercovers. Let me mention briefly, though, a couple years ago, NBC was launching all these new shows, and I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to give modern TV a try. I'm going to watch all this stuff, and I was really open to the possibilities of those, the new shows coming out. And, of course, there was this show that NBC was really pushing like crazy on us. It was called The Event. If you remember all the advertisements for that, they were all over the place, folks going, this guy had this voiceover, does he know about the event? I don't know. I don't even remember the line, but it was this stupid thing. And then you watch the show, and it was just such obviousness as far as just programming and just whatever. After 2 episodes, I threw my hands up and said, forget it. You guys are a bunch of sellouts, but, whatever. So, let me read you some excerpts from the article on StarWars.com. Kathleen Kennedy, who holds the keys to Star Wars at this point, she said, it's very exciting to have JJ aboard, leading the charge as we set off to make a new Star Wars movie. JJ is the perfect director to helm this. Beyond having such great instincts as a filmmaker, he has an intuitive understanding of this franchise. He understands the essence of the Star Wars experience and will bring that talent to create an unforgettable motion picture. Now, let me say this. When you look at the two franchises, Star Trek and Star Wars, which seem better fit for lens flares? Just think about it. Star Wars, right? And let me also say this. JJ doesn't know anything about Star Trek. The only reason why JJ did Star Trek, the 2009 film, was so that he could do his Star Wars. That's literally what it was. And now the fact that, so he can make his space movie. When am I going to make my space movie? And that was it for him. And now that he has the chance to do Star Wars 7, it's just such it's almost awkward. And another thing, but it's incredibly awesome at the same time. I don't know how to react to it because it's such as a Star Trek fan, I'm going, my Star Wars fandom and my Star Trek fandom are clashing. As a Star Trek fan, I say, well, JJ, I like him, but I got mixed feelings about him as far as what he's done with the franchise, and he doesn't know anything about Star Trek. And then with Star Wars, I'm like, this could actually be kind of neat. I mean, there shouldn't be any Star Wars 7 in the first place, but there is going to be one, and we're throwing the whole George Lucasian concept of, Star Wars was intended to be 6 films telling the story of Anakin Skywalker, and all that kind of bull that he gave us. It's a debatable thing with all the it's just all over the place, I tell you, on that one. But George himself says something with JJ. He says, I've consistently been impressed with JJ as a filmmaker and storyteller. He's an ideal choice to direct the new Star Wars film, and the legacy couldn't be in better hands. So, JJ gets to reboot Star Trek and Star Wars. I could just talk about that forever, but I'm not going to. That's huge. So, it's just crazy. What I'm wondering is, when 2009 came out, we sort of saw that there was going to be maybe the JJ trilogy, because 3 films would be sort of the standard thing to do with that franchise, rebooting it. So we got the middle one, but heck, we had to wait forever for Star Trek Into Darkness. 2009 to 2013 is a big gap there, and now that the guy's rebooting Star Wars, you think there'll be a little bit more of a gap there too? Gee whiz, we thought Super 8 was taking the guy's time. Now he's doing Star Wars. Oh, man. Star Trek, it got to come back to TV for it to be legitimate. However, I'm good with no Star Trek right now on the TNV. I'd say maybe in the 20s I'll be ready for 20s or 30s I'll be ready for the next show. That sounds distant, but heck, it's 2013. Look how far we've come. Time is a predator, as they say. So I was watching Star Trek 6 the other day. I'll go to the library and I'll see some Star Trek there, and I'll just be like, I'll just pick that up spontaneously. It's the TV shows that I go through, and then I'll occasionally just pick up a movie as a spontaneous thing. So Star Trek 6 actually isn't my favorite of the Star Trek films. It never has been, really. But I just watched it just for fun, just to have a good time with it, and because I really wanted to like it, but I've just never liked it. Just the vibes of Star Trek 4, which was a good film, by the way. Star Trek 5, which was unspeakably horrific, and Star Trek 6, which is also a good film. But from 4 and onward, I didn't like the vibe as much. As far as the movies are concerned, it is the first 3 Star Trek films, being the motion picture, which is such an artful, beautiful movie. It's so underrated. And then Star Trek 2, of course, is the obligatory one to love, and Star Trek 3, which I think is incredibly underrated. The third one needs more recognition. The Search for Spock. That was a great movie. So those are my 3 personal favorites of the Star Trek films, and something about the later Star Trek movies is, after motion picture, kind of, I don't know, after that they sort of made Gene an executive consultant, and whenever Gene isn't present in Star Trek, it gains a more militaristic identity as far as Starfleet is concerned, and you had everybody in the red uniforms and doing military stuff, and in Star Trek 6, you'll catch people using militaristic lingo and dialogue, not in terms of, hailing frequencies or technical things like that, but in terms of how characters respond and act and treat situations. I mean, in Star Trek 6, Kirk goes, "We did our bit for king and country." What? You did your bit for king and country? What the heck kind of line is that? So that's the thing with me, is Star Trek 6 was a good movie. It's fun that I think it's pretty neat that they made movies for the Trekkies, because that's what, Star Trek 6 was a film made for Trekkies, and everybody was old, and they just kept doing the films because they knew that the Trekkies wouldn't care if they were old or not. They'd love to see these characters. And I'm looking at the DVD box right now for Star Trek 6, and I really like the way, they re-released the films on Blu-ray and DVD back in 2009 to be along with the new movie. So us Trekkies got something out of the publicity, of course, and they really